We walk through life with a spotlight on our backs, at least that's what it feels like. Every stumble, every awkward silence, every blemish or misspoken word feels like it's being watched, judged, or even recorded by the world. But that's not reality. That's a cognitive illusion. A trick your mind plays on you. This is what psychologists call the spotlight effect, the tendency to believe we are being noticed more than we really are. It's a mental spotlight that shines brightly on ourselves while dimming the awareness of how little others truly focus on us. Why does this happen? Because your brain lives inside your own narrative. Your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences, they're constantly center stage. You are the main character in your story, and by default, you assume you're the main character in others' stories too. But most people are thinking about themselves, just like you. They're worrying about their own flaws, their own insecurities, their own embarrassing moments. You trip in public and immediately imagine dozens of people laughing, whispering, judging. But in truth, most didn't even notice. And if they did, they've already forgotten. Because they're busy under their own spotlight, this illusion isn't just harmless, it affects your life. You avoid dancing because you think you'll look stupid. You hold back in conversations, afraid to say the wrong thing. You wear clothes you don't like because you think others will judge your style. All to manage an audience that doesn't really exist. And ironically, this fear of judgment often leads to behaviors that make you more self-conscious, more withdrawn, and more socially anxious. You try to avoid looking foolish, and in doing so, you miss out on life. But what if you could escape the spotlight? What if you stepped out of the center and realized no one is really looking? Here's the first shift. Understand that the spotlight is internal. It's not a real light, but a projection of your own attention onto yourself. Other people aren't carrying the same spotlight for you, they're carrying their own. Second, test the illusion. Go outside in mismatched clothes. Say something silly in a conversation. Take a small, safe social risk. What you'll discover is powerful. Most people either don't notice or they don't care. And those who do? They forget we are not being watched nearly as much as we believe. And that's incredibly freeing. The third step is to embrace exposure. Practice letting yourself be seen in small doses. Let people see your humanity, your imperfections, your stumbles, your awkward pauses. You'll find connection in the places you tried to hide. When you free yourself from the spotlight, you begin to act from authenticity, not fear. You dance because you feel like it. You speak because you believe in what you're saying. You wear what feels like you, and that's magnetic. People are drawn to those who are unapologetically real, because authenticity gives others permission to be real, too. This isn't about becoming shameless or reckless. It's about breaking the mental trap that tells you everyone is looking. And therefore you must shrink, because here's the final truth. Even if they are watching, you don't need to perform. You don't exist to entertain or impress strangers. You exist to live your life, fully and freely, and when you reclaim that power, the spotlight fades. You're no longer its prisoner. You become the observer, not the observed. You become the actor, not the puppet. You become yourself, not a projection of others' imagined opinions, and that's where real freedom begins. There's a question we rarely ask ourselves. If I hadn't already invested in this time, money, emotion, would I choose it today? For most, the answer would quietly shake their entire foundation. Because we stay in things long after they've stopped serving us. We stay in jobs we hate, in relationships that drain us, in projects that died long ago because we've already given so much. But what if I told you that's not loyalty? It's a trap. It's called the sunk cost fallacy, one of the most dangerous psychological illusions we face. It's the belief that because we've already spent something, time, energy, love, Money, we should keep going, even if continuing only leads to more lost. IT whispers, you've already come this far. You might as well keep going. But every step forward isn't really progress. It's quicksand. The term sunk cost comes from economics, but its roots infect our lives at every level. A business invests millions in a failed product, but keeps pouring in more money just to justify the first investment. A person spends years with a partner who's emotionally absent, but can't walk away because of everything they've been through together. You stay. Because leaving feels like defeat. But here's the paradox. Staying is the true defeat, because every additional moment you stay is a moment robbed from your future. You're trading what could be for what used to be what's already dead. And why? Because you're afraid the past was for nothing, but it wasn't for nothing. It was a lesson. It was growth. And now it's time to close the book, not keep reading pages that don't change. Here's the cognitive hook. The more we've given, the harder it is to let go. That's not logic. That's emotion dressed up as commitment. Your brain mistakes past investment as evidence of future success. But in reality, the more we cling, the more we lose. Imagine climbing a ladder. Halfway up, you realize the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall. Do you keep climbing just because you've already climbed this far? Or do you climb down, reposition the ladder, and start over? It's painful to admit the wall was wrong. But it's even more painful to spend your whole life climbing the wrong one. The sunk cost trap doesn't only live in big life decisions, it appears in everyday moments. Watching a movie you hate just because you already paid for the ticket. Staying in a conversation you despise because it's awkward to leave. Finishing a meal you're not enjoying because you don't want to waste it. But wasting more time, more attention, more life is the real loss at SO. How do we break the trap? Start here. Forget what you've given. Ask what it's giving you now, not what it used to give. Not what it might give one day. Ask, is this worth it today? That question cuts through guilt, fear, and habit. It forces you to assess reality, not memory. Second, redefine your relationship with quitting. You've been taught that quitting equals failure, that letting go means weakness. But what if quitting is clarity? What if it's wisdom? Sometimes quitting is the most courageous choice you can make. It's a declaration that your time is sacred, that your energy is precious, that your life is not a debt to your past, but a gateway to your future. There's a quiet dignity in walking away. It doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It simply closes the door and walks into the next chapter. Without apology, we must unlearn the belief that loss means failure. Sometimes loss is liberation, because not everything we invest in is meant to grow. Some things were only meant to teach. Some jobs were meant to burn you out just enough to finally chase what sets your soul on fire. Some relationships were meant to break your heart just enough to show you what real love isn't. And some dreams were meant to fall apart so you could build better ones, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Here's the final truth. You are not what you've built. You are not what you've spent. You are not the hours, the tears, or the years. You are what you choose next. And every moment spent in something that no longer grows you is a moment stolen from what could. So, if you're holding on because you've already given so much, ask yourself, what will it cost if I keep holding on? Then make the trade. Trade guilt for growth. Trade the weight of your past for the light of possibility. Trade the mirage of sunk cost for the clarity of forward motion. Because your future doesn't care how long you've stayed stuck. It only asks, are you ready to move now? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You've finally arrived. The promotion you chased for years? Yours, the perfect body? Achieved, the bank account? Overflowing, the dream house? Bought and furnished. You did it, and now what? You expect fireworks. Fulfillment. A sense of completion. But instead, there's a strange emptiness, a whisper in the silence. Is this all there is? This is the haunting reality of the arrival fallacy, the belief that happiness lies at the end of some achievement, goal, or milestone. That once you arrive, you'll finally be at peace. But it's an illusion, a mirage in the desert. And the closer you get, the more it fades. This fallacy starts early. We're taught to defer joy in the name of success. Study hard now, be happy later. Work hard now, retire rich. Sacrifice now, celebrate eventually. But eventually never really comes. It's replaced by the next goal. And the next. And the next. It's a treadmill dressed as a staircase. Here's why this happens. Your brain is wired for survival, not satisfaction. Evolution didn't optimize you for happiness, it optimized you for chasing. When you reach a goal, your brain rewards you with a dopamine spike, but it fades fast. Then it wants the next hit, the next mountain, the next problem to solve. So you build this imaginary version of the future, a place where everything's fixed, where anxiety is gone and joy is constant, where you finally make it. But life doesn't work that way, because you still come with you, your same doubts, your same habits, your same emptiness. The job doesn't fill the void. The house doesn't fix the loneliness. The money doesn't erase the past, because goals are external. Fulfillment is internal, and the truth is, if you can't find peace in the process, you won't find it in the prize. But society sells you the fallacy over and over. Advertising screams, buy this and you'll finally feel enough. Social media whispers, look at their life. Why don't you have that yet? And your own mind, conditioned by years of this programming, feeds the loop. I just need one more thing. One more step. Then I'll rest. But rest doesn't come after arrival. It comes from presence. Now, let's break this fallacy, piece by piece. Point 1. Replace I'll be happy when with I can be happy while. Happiness isn't a destination. It's a state you cultivate while moving. You can be driven and still present, ambitious and still grateful. Ask yourself, can I enjoy the path, not just the result? If the answer is no, if the journey is always suffering, you're not climbing toward joy. You're running from emptiness. Point 2. Create goals that are based on identity, not just outcome. Instead of saying, I want to make $1 million, say, I want to become someone who is financially wise and generous. Why? Because identities evolve. Outcomes expire. You'll only feel fulfilled when your goal changes who you are, not just what you own. Point 3. Beware of the next trap. It sounds like this. I just need to finish this degree. Once I get that job, after I move out, but life doesn't begin after the next thing. It's already happening, and if you keep deferring presence for progress, you'll wake up one day with a full resume and an empty heart. The arrival fallacy is particularly dangerous because it feels noble. It's masked as discipline, grit, ambition, but underneath, it's avoidance. Avoidance of stillness, avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of asking yourself the deeper questions. Who am I without the chase? What do I fear will happen if I stop striving? What emotion am I trying to earn my way out of? When you sit with those questions, you start to see that the destination you've been chasing is really a feeling: safety, belonging, worth, peace. But those feelings don't live at the finish line. They're built through intention, not acquisition. It's not about giving up goals. It's about anchoring them in meaning, not fantasy. So set goals. Build dreams. Create. Expand. But don't expect them to save you, because no achievement can make you whole. You are already whole. You just forgot. Caught in the trance of chasing. So here's your invitation. Wake up from the fallacy. Look around. This moment, right here, is life. Not the next one. Not the future version. This breath. This heartbeat. This step, happiness isn't waiting for you at the top of some imaginary mountain. It's available now in the way you see, the way you love, the way you return to presence, and maybe, just maybe, the moment you stop chasing arrival is the moment you truly arrive. Imagine you're in a room with no mirrors, no reflections, no cameras, just you, alone. Now answer this. Who are you really? Not who your parents wanted you to be, not who your friends think you are, not the curated version of yourself you post online, but you. This question is harder than it seems, because for most of us, our self-image isn't cell-mate. It's assembled, reflected, refracted. We see ourselves through other people's eyes, and this is the silent prison most of us live in. It starts in childhood. We learn what gets approval, what earns love, what draws praise, smile when adults are around, get good grades, be quiet, be agreeable. Every behavior is a mirror reflecting back whether we're enough. Over time, we become experts at reading faces, anticipating reactions, adjusting ourselves to avoid judgment. And with each micro-adjustment, we lose a piece of our real self. We stop asking, "What do I want?" We start asking, "What will they think?" This is the mirror trap, the subconscious habit of constructing your identity based on how others perceive you. You laugh a little louder in group settings just to fit in. You hide parts of yourself that might be too much. You choose a career path because it sounds impressive. You dress, speak, behave, and perform not to express, but to be accepted. But acceptance built on performance is fragile. It requires constant maintenance. One slip, one failure, one moment of authenticity, and the mirror cracks. You scramble to fix it, to preserve the reflection. But what if the reflection was never you in the first place? Here's the paradox. The more you chase approval, the more invisible you become to yourself. And yet, we're wired for this. The human brain evolved for social survival. We needed tribes, communities, belonging. Being rejected wasn't just emotionally painful, it used to be fatal. That ancient fear still lingers. If I show my true self, I might be cast out. And so we mold. We morph. We become chameleons of expectation. But in doing so, we create a split between the public self and the private self. One that smiles on the outside, and one that aches on the inside. Eventually, the cost becomes unbearable. You feel the weight of masks you can't take off. The exhaustion of always wondering how you're being perceived. The quiet fear that if people really knew you, they wouldn't stay. And that's when you begin to disappear. How do you break free? Step 1. Recognize the mirrors. Not all mirrors are literal. Some are people, environments, cultures. Ask yourself, who do I become around certain people? And why? Notice the changes, the performance, the tightening of your voice. Wherever you feel the need to shrink or overextend, that's the mirror warping you. Step 2. Reconnect with your inner witness. There's a part of you beneath the masks. A still, quiet observer. This is your inner witness, the unchanging awareness that sees without judging. When you meditate, journal, or simply sit in silence, you return to it. It's not interested in impressions. It just is. Let this voice grow louder than the external noise. Let it remind you, you're allowed to exist as you are. Step 3. Challenge the fear of rejection. Ask yourself, what am I afraid they'll see? Is it your sensitivity? Your ambition? Your weirdness? Now ask, who taught me that was wrong? Most of your shame isn't yours. It was inherited, implanted, and here's the truth. If someone leaves because you showed who you really are, they were never seeing you in the first place. They were seeing a projection. Let them go. Better to be alone in truth than surrounded in illusion. Step 4. Build relationships where you can be unmasked. This is rare. Sacred. But when you find people who accept your rawness, your contradictions, your chaos, hold them close, because in their presence, you'll start to rebuild the mirror, not as a distortion, but as a window, a reflection not of who they want you to be, but of who you truly are. This is the power of authenticity, not loud, not attention-seeking, but quietly unshakable. To walk into a room and not wonder who you need to be, to speak and not scan for reactions, to live not as a brand, but as a being. That's freedom. But don't confuse authenticity with rebellion. You don't have to be loud to be real. You just have to be honest. With yourself, with your boundaries, with your truth. Step out of the mirror trap. Stop outsourcing your identity. Stop trying to be palatable. You are not a product to be consumed. You are not a reflection to be managed. You are a soul, unfolding, complex, ever-changing, and the moment you stop chasing their gaze, you'll finally start to see yourself. There's a voice in your head. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It whispers. You hear it when you hesitate, when you try something new, when you fail, when you succeed. It says things like, "You're not ready yet." People like you don't do that. Don't stand out. Stay safe. This voice isn't your intuition. It's not your true self. It's something far more deceptive. It's an invisible script, a subconscious belief that runs your life like a hidden operating system. You didn't write it. It was written for you. By your parents, your culture, your religion, your teachers, your traumas. And the most dangerous thing about these scripts, you don't even realize they're there. You live by them. You make decisions based on them. You build your identity around them. And yet, if you asked yourself why you believe what you believe, you might not have an answer. That's the power of an invisible script. It's not just a belief. It's a rule you didn't even know you were following. Think of it like this. You're in a maze. Every turn you make, every wall you hit, every dead end, you think it's your choice. But in reality, you're just following a path someone else laid out, a script so familiar it feels like truth. Let's explore a few common ones. 1. Success means sacrifice. You grind yourself into the ground because you were taught that worth comes from struggle. Rest feels like laziness. Joy feels unearned. You believe that if you're not constantly pushing, you're falling behind. But what if that script is broken? What if success could mean alignment, not burnout? What if rest was part of growth? You've followed this script so long, you don't realize it's optional. Point 2. Good people don't get angry. So you suppress it. You bottle it. You turn it inward and call it anxiety. But here's the truth. Anger isn't evil. It's a signal. A boundary being crossed. A voice saying, this isn't okay. You weren't born believing anger was wrong. You were taught to be palatable. To smile. To please. That script now lives in your nervous system. But unspoken anger doesn't disappear, it festers, and one day it explodes. Not as fire, but as silence. As withdrawal. As numbness. Point 3. Love must be earned. You bend. You mold. You overgive. Over-apologize. Over-explain. Because somewhere along the way, you absorbed the idea that love is conditional. That it comes with performance. But real love doesn't come from proving. It comes from presence. From being seen, not edited. If your script says, I must be perfect to be loved, you'll never let yourself be real. And if you can't be real, love won't feel safe. It will feel like pressure. There are hundreds more. Money is evil. I must be the strong one. If I fail, I am a failure. My worth is in what I do, not who I am. All of them invisible. All of them powerful. How do you find your scripts? Start by listening. When you face resistance, Ask, what story am I believing right now? When you feel guilt, shame, fear, ask, whose voice is this really? Journal it. Write it out. Name it. The moment you name the script, you begin to loosen its grip. Here's a journal prompt. One belief I inherited that no longer serves me is, if I let go of that belief, I would. The fear that keeps me attached to it is, let yourself answer honestly, not the filtered version, the raw one. The truth is, you can't heal what you haven't identified, and you can't rewrite a script you don't realize you're following. So start there. Then ask, who would I be without this script? Let your imagination answer, because that version of you, the one without inherited fear, guilt, or pressure, is already inside you. It's just been silenced by programming. Here's the good news. Scripts can be edited. You are not your conditioning. You are not your past. You are not the voice that tells you to stay small. You are the one who hears the voice, and that means you can change it. Replace "I'm not enough" with "I am whole." Replace "I must hustle to matter" with "I can rest and still succeed." Replace "I can't trust people" with "I can choose who deserves my trust." These aren't affirmations. They're rewrites. They're the conscious act of taking back authorship of your life, and over time, those rewrites become new beliefs. And those beliefs become new behaviors, and those behaviors shape new realities. So here's your challenge. Become the author, not the actor. Stop playing a role in someone else's script. Write your own. Let it be messy. Let it be real. Let it reflect who you are, not who you were told to be, because freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. It comes from knowing why you want it, from choosing with awareness, not programming. Your mind is not a prison, it's a page. And you hold the pen. What if the reason you're exhausted is because you're chasing a finish line that keeps moving? You earn more money, but it still doesn't feel secure. You achieve more goals, but satisfaction slips through your fingers. You improve your body, your status, your skills. But there's always another next. You tell yourself, just a little more. Then I'll rest. Then I'll be enough. But that then never comes. Welcome to the scarcity loop, a mental trap that convinces you you're perpetually behind, even when you're not. And here's the trick. Scarcity isn't about how much you have. It's about how much you feel you lack. You can be rich and feel poor, loved and feel alone, accomplished and feel like a fraud, because scarcity isn't a number. It's a narrative that IT says. What you have is not enough. What you are is not enough. And no matter what you do, it never will be. This isn't just a mindset. It's a cycle. A loop. Let's break it down. 1. You feel a gap that something's missing. You feel behind. Inadequate. Not there yet. Point 2. You chase a fixed, a goal, a purchase, a relationship, a metric. You hustle. You grind. Point 3. You reach it. You get the thing. The number. The result. For a moment. Relief. 4. The bar moves. Now that you've leveled up, so have your expectations. Your new reality becomes your baseline, and so the loop restarts. This loop is designed not by logic, but by fear. Fear that if you stop striving, you'll fall behind. Fear that stillness means failure. Fear that you're the thing that must always be fixed. And we're surrounded by systems that feed this loop. Social media turns other people's highlights into your yardstick. You scroll through curated perfection and wonder why your real life feels dull. But comparison is the fuel of scarcity. IT tricks you into measuring yourself with someone else's ruler. Marketing thrives on this too. IT whispers, you're not enough. But if you buy this, you will be, and you believe it. For a moment. Until the high wears off, then it's on to the next product, the next hack, the next promise. Even education does it. We're taught to compete, to rank, to prove our value with numbers and grades. We're rarely taught how to feel whole, only how to chase more. But what's the cost? burnout, anxiety, a persistent dissatisfaction even in success. Because when enough is always one step away, peace becomes impossible. So, how do you break the loop? Magnifying glass tilted left. Step 1. Define your enough. Not society's. Not your parents'. Yours. Ask yourself, if I had enough, what would that actually look and feel like? How would I know I'd arrived? What would I stop doing? What would I start doing? Most people never ask this. They just keep running. But if you never define enough, the chase becomes endless. Write it down. Make it concrete, not just in money or milestones, but in peace, time, joy. Brain step 2. Rewire from scarcity to sufficiency. Scarcity says, there's not enough. Sufficiency says, I have what I need right now. This isn't toxic positivity. It's presence. It's stepping into the reality that in this moment, you are breathing, aware, capable, and that's enough to begin. Practice this in small moments. When you eat, slow down, taste. When you rest, don't scroll, feel. When you succeed, pause. Celebrate, instead of rushing to the next rung. This isn't laziness. It's breaking the addiction to more. Speech balloon. Step 3. Audit your inputs. Who are you listening to? What are you watching, following, consuming? If you flood your mind with images of people doing better, you'll always feel less. It's not that they're bad. It's that your nervous system was not designed to compare itself to thousands of people at once. Unfollow what triggers lack. Curate what cultivates enoughness. Your mental diet is as important as your physical one. Red heart. Step 4. Choose depth over accumulation. Scarcity makes us shallow. It says, collect as many things, experiences, achievements as possible. But depth is where meaning lives. Instead of chasing 5 casual friendships, go deep with one. Instead of hoarding goals, commit to the one that matters most. Trade more for meaning, because the truth is, more is never the answer. More money won't erase insecurity. More followers won't make you feel loved. More goals won't bring purpose. At some point, you have to stop adding and start being. The final step is this. Rewrite your identity. If you see yourself as someone who's always lacking, you'll find lack everywhere. But if you begin to see yourself as whole, even while growing, you step out of the loop. Say it aloud. I can grow without rushing. I can be ambitious and grounded. I am not defined by what I produce. I have enough. I am enough. Right now. You're not lazy, you're not behind, you're not broken. You're just waking up from a trance that told you chasing more was the only way to be worthy. But now you know better. Now you can pause. You can choose, you can rest, because enoughness isn't a destination, it's a decision, and you can make it today. You wait. You wait for the spark, for the push, for the sign. You say, when I feel ready, I'll start. When I'm motivated, I'll move. When I'm confident, I'll leap. But here's the truth. You won't feel ready. You may never feel fully motivated, and that is not a problem. In fact, it's the very nature of how humans worked. Let's dismantle one of the most damaging myths of modern self-help. The belief that motivation must come before action. It sounds intuitive, logical. Motivated people act, right? But neuroscience says otherwise. Brain hears what actually happens. You act, even a little. That action creates progress. Progress gives your brain dopamine, a reward signal. That dopamine creates motivation to keep going. In short, action comes first. Motivation comes second. This is called the motivation feedback loop. And it's the reason why people who seem disciplined or driven aren't waiting to feel good. They're acting despite feeling uncertain. They've trained themselves to move before their mind gives them permission. Let's go deeper. Prohibited the readiness trap. The belief that you must feel confident before you act is seductive, but false. Confidence doesn't precede action. IT is built through action. Think of a baby learning to walk. They wobble, fall, try again. They don't wait to feel sure-footed. They move and become sure-footed. Yet as adults, we develop shame around failure. We expect our first step to be flawless, and so we hesitate. We wait for the fog to clear, but clarity is not a precondition for movement. It's a byproduct of movement. You want to feel ready, start, even when you're anxious, even when you're unsure, especially then. Because the willingness to act while afraid is called courage, and courage always comes before confidence. Direct hit motivation is unreliable by design. Motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it's fleeting. IT rises. It fades. If you build your life around waiting for motivation, your progress will always be inconsistent. That's why high performers don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems, routines, triggers, environment, accountability. Motivation is great for getting started, but discipline is what gets you across the finish line, and discipline isn't harsh. It's compassionate structure. It's telling yourself, I love my future self too much to leave their success up to how I happen to feel today. Let that sink in. Counterclockwise arrows button the power of tiny actions. You don't need to take massive leaps. You need to lower the threshold of action. Want to write a book? Start with a single sentence. Want to exercise? Just put on your shoes. Want to meditate? Sit in silence for 1 minute. Small actions defeat inertia. And inertia, not laziness, is your real enemy. Psychologists call this the activation energy principle. IT means the hardest part of any task is simply starting. So make the start stupidly small, embarrassingly small, and celebrate it, because starting creates momentum, and momentum, once in motion, becomes self-sustaining. Smiling face with horns, the resistance voice. There's another reason you don't act. A whisper in your mind that says, you'll look stupid. You'll fail. You're not good enough yet. Why even try? This voice isn't truth. It's resistance. A psychological defense mechanism trying to keep you in the familiar. IT masks itself as logic, but its real job is to preserve comfort. Here's the paradox. The resistance doesn't show up when you do things that don't matter. IT only appears when you're about to grow. If you're feeling resistance, that's not a red light. It's a signal you're on the right path. Learn to welcome it. There you are. I must be doing something brave. Smile. And do it anyway. Repeat button. Build ritual. Not hype. If motivation is the fire, ritual is the match. High performers don't hype themselves every day. They build habits so small they become automatic. Morning rituals, creative warm-ups, workout sequences to wind down routines. These remove decision fatigue. You no longer ask, should I do this? You just do it because it's who you are. Identity matters. Instead of saying, I'm trying to write, say, I'm a writer who writes daily. Identity-based habits stick. When you act in alignment with who you believe you are, the behavior becomes self-reinforcing. This is how change lasts. Compass the real secret. Start ugly. You want your first version to be perfect, but perfection is paralysis. Start ugly. Start with typos, awkwardness, bad lighting, shaky confidence. Just start, because starting ugly is the only path to finishing beautifully. Every artist, creator, leader, and visionary began with cringeworthy first attempts. You just didn't see that part. Don't compare. You're beginning to someone else's middle. Your job isn't to be amazing. Your job is to be in motion. Key final shift. Act without permission. Here's the truth. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need permission. You don't need to know how it all ends. You just need to begin. Every step you take teaches you what the next one looks like. Confidence grows with evidence, and evidence is born from movement. If you've been waiting for motivation, here it is. Not from a feeling, but from a truth. You can move afraid. You can act unsure. You can begin imperfect, and that's what creates real power, because while others wait for the fire to ignite them, you become the spark. You meet someone, and something about them bothers you. Not just a little. They irritate you deeply, even if you barely know them. Their voice, their confidence, their choices, their success, their weakness, their neediness. You don't just observe them, you react to them. But here's the twist. The strongest reactions you have to others are often not about them at all. They're a reflection of you. This is the mirror effect, a psychological phenomenon where the traits we reject, judge, or despise in others are often buried, unacknowledged parts of ourselves. We don't see people as they are, we see them as we are. When someone irritates you, you're not just witnessing them. You're often confronting a disowned part of your own identity. It's called projection. Let's unpack it. Projection is your mind's way of avoiding uncomfortable truths about yourself. You dislike a trait, but instead of acknowledging it in yourself, you spot it out there. In others, in strangers, in family. In enemies, it feels safer that way. Cleaner, easier. But projection distorts reality. It makes the world feel hostile when the real storm is within. Here's an example. You see someone bragging online. You feel disgust. You think, they're so arrogant, so full of themselves. But pause. What if that person is a mirror? Are you angry because they remind you of your own buried desire to be seen, to shine without shame, to take up space? Or perhaps they trigger a part of you that was arrogant once, and you haven't forgiven yourself. Or maybe, deep down, you wish you had the courage to express yourself that boldly. The intensity of your reaction is the clue. When something is truly irrelevant to your identity, it barely registers. But when it touches something raw, unhealed, or hidden, it lights a fire, and often, the traits we despise in others are the very traits we suppress in ourselves. We hate their selfishness because we've been trained to overgive. We resent their loudness because we've been taught to stay small. We mock their mess because we've been forced to be perfect. Your judgment is a roadmap, a spotlight, not on them, but on you. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The mirror effect doesn't just show you your shadows. It shows you your potential. Sometimes, what you envy in others is a glimpse of your own unlived life. You see someone living freely, and it hurts because you've caged yourself. You see someone succeeding, and it stings because you've talked yourself out of your own dreams. You see someone loved, and it aches because you've convinced yourself you're unworthy. In those moments, your reaction isn't about their joy. It's about your disconnection from your own. So, how do you work with the mirror? Start by asking, what exactly am I reacting to? Have I ever acted this way before? Is there a part of me that secretly relates to this? What would it mean if I accepted this trait in myself? This is not about excusing harmful behavior. It's about seeing clearly, because when you recognize your projections, you reclaim power. The person in front of you no longer controls your emotions. You do. And that means your reactions become invitations. Every trigger is a teacher. Every judgment is a chance to understand yourself more deeply. Let's go further. Sometimes, the mirror reveals not a disowned trait, but a disowned wound. You feel disgust toward someone who's needy, not because you are needy, but because you were shamed for needing as a child. You judge someone's insecurity not because you lack confidence, but because your survival depended on appearing strong. In these moments, your reaction points to an old self you had to abandon. Fit. Stay safe. Be loved. The mirror effect becomes a time machine. It takes you back to who you were before the world told you who to be. And this is where healing begins. When you stop projecting, you start integrating. You reclaim the parts of yourself you disowned, the parts that were too much or not enough, the parts you buried to survive, and suddenly, you become whole. You don't just tolerate others, you understand them. You don't just react, you reflect. You don't just judge, you discern. Your emotional landscape softens where there was anger. There's curiosity. Where there was resistance, there's compassion. Where there was shame, there's light. And you stop needing to fix everyone around you because you've stopped rejecting yourself. You no longer live at the mercy of others' traits. You become sovereign. It's not easy. The mirror shows you things you'd rather ignore, but it also reveals your depth, your power, your humanity, and that's the invitation. Stop pointing the finger outward and start turning inward, because the people who trigger you the most are often the ones teaching you the most about your pain, your patterns, your potential. The next time someone makes your skin crawl or stirs something in you can't explain, pause, look inward, and ask, what part of me is asking to be seen right now? The mirror never lies, but it doesn't judge either. It just reflects. And in that reflection, you don't find blame, you find yourself. You glance at the clock, you scroll. You switch tabs, you feel behind. You tell yourself, I should be further by now. I'm wasting time. I've missed my moment. It's subtle, but it's constant. This quiet panic beneath your thoughts, a low hum that says, you're running out. This is time anxiety, a psychological phenomenon that haunts more people than we admit. It's the fear of wasting your life, the fear that you're not doing enough, not fast enough, that you're falling behind an invisible timeline that everyone else seems to be following. But where did this come from? Why do so many of us feel like we're late to our own lives? Let's trace it back. From a young age, we're taught to measure time in milestones, first steps, first words, grades, graduation, job, marriage, house, retirement. It becomes a checklist, a race, and every delay feels like failure. But here's the truth, that timeline, it's not real. It's a cultural script, a narrative handed to you without consent, and yet, you internalized it. Now, whenever you take a detour, pause, breathe. Your mind screams, you're off track. But whose track? And what if there is no track? Time anxiety thrives in comparison. You look at someone else's life and treat it like a mirror for your own. They've achieved more. They're younger. They're already there. But you're not seeing their entire path. You're seeing their highlights through your insecurities, and in doing so, you forget something essential. You're not late. You're on your own clock. Let that settle. You are not meant to bloom on anyone else's schedule. Some people peak early, some peak late. Some never peak because they realize they don't need to. Life isn't a timeline, it's a landscape, and landscapes aren't rushed, they unfold. Still, the fear remains. You worry, what if I look back and regret everything? But regret is not a warning sign, it's often a projection. The fear of regret causes paralysis. You overthink your decisions because you're terrified of choosing the wrong path. But here's what time has taught the wise. The wrong path often leads you exactly where you needed to go. Detours teach you what highways never can. Your failures reveal what your successes hide. The time you thought you wasted was teaching you patience, humility, and self-awareness. It's only in hindsight that meaning is made. Time is not the enemy, but your relationship with it might be. When you live in constant urgency, you forget how to be present. You rush through days like checkpoints. Every moment becomes a means to an end, and the end, it's always further away. This is how time anxiety steals your life, not by speeding it up, but by pulling your attention away from where it already is, right here, now. How do you break the grip of time anxiety? It begins with a radical shift. Stop measuring your life by duration. Start measuring it by depth. A single hour of presence is more valuable than a decade of distraction. A moment of real joy is worth more than a month of hollow productivity. You don't need more time. You need more aliveness in the time you already have. And that requires slowing down, silencing the inner critic, turning off the scoreboard. It requires asking, what actually matters to me? Because time anxiety thrives on borrowed dreams. When you chase someone else's version of success, your soul feels the misalignment. It panics. But when your actions are rooted in meaning, not approval, time expands. You stop fearing the future, you start inhabiting the present, and suddenly, life feels less like a race and more like a rhythm you can trust. Here's another truth. The people who seem most at peace with time are not the ones doing the most. They're the ones most aligned with what they're doing. They don't rush, they choose. They don't hustle blindly. They move with clarity. They've realized something that most of the world forgets. Busyness is not proof of importance. Presence is. You don't have to fill every second. You have to feel every second. Because in the end, no one remembers how much you got done. They remember how you made them feel, how alive you were, how deeply you lived, and those things are not bound by the clock. What's the antidote to time anxiety? Slow down. Reconnect to purpose. Redefine success. Make peace with your pace, because even if you live a long life, but never truly lived, that's the real tragedy. And even if your time is short, but rich with presence, love, and truth, then your life was full. Right now, as you listen, you're not behind. You're not early. You're not too late. You're simply here, and that's enough. Stop trying to outrun time. Start learning to walk with it. Treat time not as an enemy, but as a guide. It's not rushing you, it's revealing you. And if you truly listen, you'll hear what it's always been whispering. You're not wasting your life. You are waking up to it. There's a hum in the background of your life. Notifications, messages, deadlines, the glow of screens, the thrum of urgency. You wake up with it. You fall asleep to it. It's constant, invisible, unrelenting. Noise. Not the kind you hear, but the kind that pulls at your mind, tugging, prodding, scattering your focus like dust in the wind. It's everywhere, and it's addicting. But what's the cost? What happens when you never hear your own thoughts in their raw, unfiltered state? When the noise is louder than your intuition, in the silence, you meet yourself. But silence is scary. Because in silence, there's no distraction, and pretending, and filters, just you and the truth. This is why most people fear silence. Not because it's empty, but because it's too full of unprocessed emotion, too full of old questions, too full of unmet needs. Instead, we run, we scrolled, we binged, we fill every moment with something anything to keep from feeling what the silence reveals. But here's what no one tells you. Your mind isn't meant to be constantly filled. It's meant to breathe. And when you strip away the noise, something miraculous happens. Your thoughts slow. Your nervous system softens. Your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice what's really happening beneath the surface. You realize that so much of your anxiety, your restlessness, comes from the clutter you've been carrying. Not physical clutter, mental clutter, other people's opinions, old conversations on loop, worries about tomorrow, memories from 10 years ago. They all swirl like static, clogging your clarity. But silence, real, intentional silence, clears the channeled. It makes room, not just for peace, but for insight, because creativity doesn't thrive in chaos. It blooms in stillness. And you can't hear your inner voice if you never stop listening to the outer world. Imagine this. You're sitting alone, no phone, no music, no distraction, just stillness. First, it's uncomfortable. Your mind races. You feel the itch to check something, fix something, do something. But then, slowly, it softens. The noise fades, and in its place a whisper, your own voice, faint but steady. You begin to hear what you've been avoiding, what you truly want, what you're truly afraid of, what actually matters. This is the medicine most people are missing. Not another productivity hack, not another motivational video, but this. Silence, space, depth. A return to the inner world, because that's where your wisdom lives, And here's the paradox. The more noise you let in, the less of yourself you can hear. You become a stranger to your own intuition. You outsource your truth. You drown in other people's narratives. But when you reclaim silence, you reclaim authority. You no longer chase clarity, you become it. You no longer need permission, you move from alignment. And alignment, not achievement, is what brings peace. So, how do you reclaim this inner silence in a world designed to destroy it? You carve it out. You protect it fiercely. You make silence a ritual, not a luxury. Start with 10 minutes a day. No phone. No input. No goal. Just listen to your breath, your thoughts, the subtle sensations rising and falling within you. First, it might feel pointless. You might want to quit. You might feel boredom or resistance, but don't confuse boredom with absence. Boredom is just the detox of overstimulation, and on the other side of it is something rare, inner presence. That moment where you stop being the actor in the noise and start becoming the observer of it. It changes everything, because when you're grounded in silence, the world can't shake you as easily. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop absorbing chaos. You start radiating clarity. You begin to move with rhythm instead of urgency, with depth instead of speed, and most importantly, you remember. You are not the noise. You are the stillness beneath it. You are not the storm. You are the eye inside it. This is why silence isn't empty. It's sacred. It's where all your scattered pieces return home. It's not a retreat from life. It's a return to it, because in the stillness you remember. You don't need to chase your worth. You just need to sit still long enough to feel it. The next time you feel overwhelmed, buried under the weight of too much, pulled in 100 directions, step away, turn inward, breathe, listen, because in the quiet, you don't just hear the world more clearly, you hear yourself, and that changes everything. Controlled. It's what we crave when the world feels unstable. It's what we grasp when everything around us shifts. We build routines. We make plans. We set expectations. We micromanage outcomes. All in an effort to protect ourselves from the unknown. But here's the quiet truth. The more you try to control everything, the more everything controls you, because life isn't built for certainty, it's built for movement. And movement requires surrender. That word, surrender, is misunderstood. We think it means defeat, giving up, losing power, but real surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the deep understanding that not everything is yours to shape, that not every storm must be stopped, that sometimes peace is found not in fighting the current, but in learning how to float. But how often do we fight? You overthink every detail. You try to anticipate every possibility. You replay conversations. You plan your next 5 years. You attempt to bend reality into the shape of your fears, and all the while, you call it being responsible. But is it? Or is it an escape from vulnerability? Because deep down, letting go requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in life, trust that even if it doesn't unfold how you imagined, it will still unfold with meaning. The illusion of control gives you a temporary sense of safety, but it comes at a cost. It tightens your body, it clutters your mind, it makes you brittle when life asks for flexibility, and worst of all, it keeps you from presence. You're never really here. You're stuck in strategy mode, always fixing, always adjusting, always scanning for threats, and in doing so, you miss what's actually happening. You miss the softness of the moment. You miss the beauty that can't be controlled. You miss the unexpected magic that only shows up when you release your grip. The most powerful moments in life are never planned. They arrive unannounced. They unfold without effort. They move through you, not because you forced them, but because you allowed them. That's the paradox. The more you resist uncertainty, the more anxious you become. But the more you embrace it, the freer you feel. Think about this. You didn't control the moment you were born. You don't control the beat of your heart. You don't control the weather, the world, or the people around you. So why do you believe you need to control everything else? Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without clinging. It means you do your part and then release the outcome. It means you take the step and trust that the ground will meet your foot. But our culture tells us otherwise. It glorifies control. It worships certainty. It teaches us that if you just work hard enough, plan long enough, strategize thoroughly enough, then nothing will go wrong. But life doesn't operate on algorithms. It operates on aliveness. And aliveness is unpredictable, messy, unscripted. Live fully. You must make peace with not knowing. You must open your hands. And when you do, when you truly let go, you find something unexpected. Relief. You no longer carry what's not yours to carry. You no longer argue with reality. You no longer waste energy trying to hold what was never meant to be held. Instead, you begin to dance with life. You respond instead of react. You create instead of control. You trust instead of tense. And from that place, everything changes. Your relationships soften. Your inner world calms. Your choices become clearer because you're no longer trying to shape the world into your fear. You're shaping your presence to meet the world as it is. This is what the wisest people have always known. The river doesn't need a dam. It needs flow. The wind doesn't obey commands, that it obeys nature, and your life isn't a machine. It's a tide. Control is a tight fist. Surrender is an open palm. How do you practice letting go? Start small. Notice where your grip is tightest. That situation you keep replaying. That outcome you keep forcing. That person you keep trying to fix. Pause. Breathe. Release. Say to yourself, I've done my part. The rest is not mine to hold. It might feel terrifying, but beneath the fear is something else, a deeper kind of peace, a quiet knowing that life is intelligent, that there's order even in the chaos, that things don't need your control to work out, they need your trust. And this isn't about passivity, it's about presence. You still show up, you still care, you still move with intention. But you stop clenching, you stop resisting what is, and in that space, life breathes through you. Not because you forced it, but because you let it so today. Let go of one thing, just one, a worry, a regret, a storyline you've outgrown. Place it down. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your peace matters more. And remember, control was never the source of your power. Presence is. Let that be your anchor, not the illusion of control, but the courage to trust. Because when you let go, you don't lose yourself. You find who you were before the fear, and that version of you. That's the one worth trusting. You're always reaching, always striving, always tweaking, adjusting, fixing, trying to become perfect, not because you're vain, not because you're shallow, but because somewhere, deep beneath the surface, you learned that love is conditional. You were taught that value is earned, that you're only worthy when you're flawless, that mistakes make you unlovable, that flaws are flaws, nothing more, and so you spend your life polishing the mask. Smiling when you feel broken, succeeding even when it empties you, saying yes when your soul screams no, because you believe perfection will protect you from rejection, from judgment, from being seen in your rawness. But here's the tragedy. Perfection doesn't protect you. It isolates you. It turns your life into a performance. It makes every moment a test. It turns joy into a checklist and turns you into a ghost inside your own life. Because perfection is a moving target, you never arrive, you never exhale, you never feel done. You just keep running, and the more you run, the more you lose sight of who you were before the race began. You forget that you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole, and wholeness includes the cracks, the contradictions, the uncertainty. Because real strength is not in hiding the mess, it's in honoring it. But we live in a world that rewards the image, not the depth, not the truth, not the imperfection that makes us real. Social media has made perfection feel achievable. Every scroll whispers, "You should look like this. Be more like that. Fix this about yourself." Then, maybe, you'll finally be enough. But enough is not something you earn, it's something you remember. And remembering means unlearning the shame, unlearning the impossible standards, unlearning the belief that love must be bought with flawlessness. Pause. Ask yourself, who are you performing for? What are you afraid they'll see? And more importantly, what would happen if you let them see it? Would it really break you, or would it set you free? Because the people who truly love you, the ones who matter, aren't looking for perfect. They're looking for real, the version of you that breathes, that stumbles, that cries without apologizing, that feels deeply and shows up anyway. That version is magnetic because it gives others permission to be human too. That's the real tragedy of perfectionism. It doesn't just rob you of your humanity. It robs everyone around you. It creates distance instead of connection. Because when you present a flawless mask, others don't see a person, they see a standard, and that standard feels cold, unreachable, lonely. But vulnerability, it pulls people and it says, "I don't have it all figured out. I struggle too. I'm healing, not finished." And in those moments, the pressure dissolves, the walls fall, and suddenly, you're not performing, you're living. Ask yourself again, what if you stopped trying to be impressive and started being honest? What if your goal wasn't to be admired, but to be understood? What if good enough wasn't a compromise, but a return? A return to the you that existed before shame, before comparison, before you believed that love had prerequisites. This is the inner work. The work no one sees. The work that doesn't get likes or trophies, but it's the work that sets you free, because perfectionism doesn't just live in your actions, it lives in your beliefs. The belief that mistakes define you, that vulnerability weakens you, that if you don't measure up, you'll be abandoned. But none of that is truth. It's trauma, it's programming, it's the residue of a world that profits off your insecurity. Today. Breathe, lower the bar. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to stop punishing yourself. You care enough to be present. Be kind to your own mind. Treat yourself like someone you love, not someone you must constantly improve. Because the moment you stop trying to prove your worth is the moment you begin to feel it, and from that place, life softens. You laugh more, you cry deeper, you connect with others not through polish, but through presence. You stop hiding your cracks and start seeing them as proof that you've lived, because that's all perfection ever stole from you. The rawness, the humanness, the freedom to let it go, let it fall apart, not your life, your image. The version of you you've been curating, controlling, protecting, let it shatter. And what remains will be real, will be grounded, will be enough, because you were never broken. You were only ever buried under the myth of perfection.